It was a night of dread when Claire embarked on a long drive to visit her sick grandmother in the countryside. The winding road before her seemed to have no end, snaking through dense forests and rugged hills. The darkness was so thick that she could barely see the way forward. The only sounds were the howling wind and the occasional thunder that boomed in the distance. The rain started to pour down hard, striking her windshield in a violent assault. Claire turned on the wipers, but the water made it even harder to see. The road seemed to have vanished into a blurry abyss, and she felt like she was driving into a void. Her knuckles were white as she gripped the wheel, trying to stay calm. As she drove deeper into the wilderness, Claire began to feel uneasy. The atmosphere was oppressive, and she felt like she was being watched. Her mind conjured up all sorts of dark scenarios. A ghost, a demon, a serial killer. She tried to push those thoughts away, but they kept creeping back, filling her with fear. Just as she turned a bend in the road, something moved in the shadows ahead. Claire squinted, trying to make out what it was. At first, she thought it was a tree branch swaying in the wind. But as she drew closer, she realized with growing horror that it was a figure standing in the middle of the road. It was a man, tall and gaunt, with a long black coat that flapped in the wind. His face was twisted in a grotesque grin, and his eyes glinted with a wicked gleam. Claire slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The man leaped at her car, slamming his body against the hood with a sickening thud. Claire gasped, her heart racing. She tried to reverse the car, but the figure was now standing right behind her, blocking her path. She could feel his breath on her neck, cold and clammy. Her mind was in a frenzy, trying to come up with a plan, but every thought was drowned out by the fear that consumed her. With no other option, Claire stepped out of the car, her legs shaking. The man loomed over her, his eyes gleaming with a sickening hunger. Claire stumbled back, her mind reeling with terror. But then something strange happened. The man began to shimmer and twist, his features becoming blurred and indistinct. And then, in a flash of blinding light, he vanished into thin air. Claire stood there, stunned, unsure of what had just happened. She got back into her car, her heart still pounding. She turned on the engine and drove off, eager to leave that cursed place behind. But as she drove, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was still there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. The rain continued to pour down, and the wind howled like a beast in agony. Claire felt like she was driving through a nightmare, and she couldn't wait to wake up. When she finally arrived at her grandmother's house, she was trembling with fear. She told her grandmother everything that had happened, hoping that it was just her imagination running wild. But her grandmother's face grew pale as she listened.
"Claire,"
she said,
"that man you saw, he's not just any man. He's the ghost of a serial killer who died on that very stretch of road years ago. He's been haunting these parts for years, looking for his next victim. You were lucky to get away."
Claire felt her blood run cold. She felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet.
How could this be real? A ghost? A serial killer?
It was too much to bear. She tried to shake off the fear, but it clung to her like a cloak. Every shadow seemed to hide a sinister figure. Every sound made her heart skip a beat. She couldn't sleep that night, and when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the twisted face of the ghost. The next day, Claire decided to head back home. She didn't want to stay in that cursed place any longer. As she drove down the same road, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. What if the ghost appeared again? What if he was waiting for her? But nothing happened. The road was quiet and still. The rain had stopped and the sky was clear. Claire breathed a sigh of relief, feeling like she had dodged a bullet. She turned on the radio, hoping to find some distraction. And that's when she heard a news report about a recent string of murders in the area. The victims had all been young women, driving alone at night. The police had no leads, no suspects. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Was it the work of the ghost? Had he found his next victim? She felt sick to her stomach, imagining the horror that those women had gone through. But then, something dawned on her. It was almost as if he wasn't a ghost at all, but something else, something more sinister. She decided to go to the police, to tell them what she had seen. They were skeptical at first, but when she told them about the recent murders, they started to take her seriously. They searched the area but found no trace of the ghost or the killer. But then, a week later, they found something. A hidden lair, deep in the forest, filled with evidence. The killer's hideout. It was as if he had been watching her, following her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The police apprehended the killer, and he was brought to trial. Claire testified, her voice trembling, but she was brave. She told the jury everything about the ghost, about the fear, about the truth. Claire's testimony sent shivers down the spines of everyone in the courtroom. Her voice was steady, but the terror in her eyes was evident. She described the ghost in vivid detail, his twisted face, his bony fingers, his sharp teeth. She spoke of how he had appeared out of nowhere, how he had leaped at her car, how he had vanished into thin air. As she spoke, the jury listened in rapt attention, their eyes wide with horror. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. A ghost. A serial killer. It sounded like something out of a horror movie. But Claire was telling the truth. She described how the ghost had followed her, how she had felt his presence, how she had sensed his hunger. She spoke of the fear that had consumed her, the terror that had left her shaking and trembling. She held nothing back, speaking from the heart. The killer sat there, stone-faced, as Claire testified against him. He knew that his game was up, that he had been caught, but he also knew that he had come closer to killing Claire than he had with any of his previous victims. He felt a sense of satisfaction in knowing that he had instilled fear in her, that he had made her doubt her sanity. But as Claire finished her testimony, the killer's expression changed. He realized that he had underestimated her, that she was stronger than he had thought. He knew that he had failed to break her, to make her his victim. He felt a surge of anger, a burning desire for revenge. As the trial came to an end, the killer was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But Claire couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that lingered within her. She knew that the killer was still out there, somewhere, plotting his revenge. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Claire tried to move on, to forget the horrors that she had faced. But she couldn't escape the memories, the nightmares that haunted her every night. She felt like she was being watched, like someone was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, one night, she heard a knock at her door. She hesitated, unsure of who it could be. She looked through the peephole, but there was no one there. She felt a knot in her stomach, a sense of impending doom. She opened the door, slowly. And there he was, the killer, standing before her with a wicked smile on his face. He had escaped from prison, and now he was back for revenge. Claire screamed, but it was too late. The killer lunged at her, his eyes glinting with madness. She tried to fight back, but he was too strong. He overpowered her, pinning her to the ground. She felt his breath on her neck, cold and clammy. And then, something strange happened. The killer began to shimmer and twist, his features becoming blurred and indistinct. And then, in a flash of blinding light, he vanished into thin air. Claire lay there, panting, unsure of what had just happened. She felt a sense of relief, but also a sense of dread. She knew that the killer wasn't really a ghost, but something else. Something more terrifying. She knew that he was still out there somewhere, waiting for his next victim. And she knew that the road of shadows was a dangerous one, full of terrors and nightmares.
As the young couple drove through the remote area late at night, they couldn't help but feel uneasy. The darkness was thick, and the only sounds were the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel beneath the tires. They had been driving for hours and hadn't seen another car in what felt like ages. When they saw the hitchhiker standing by the side of the road, the young couple felt a pang of sympathy. He looked like he was in his early 20s, with shaggy hair and a backpack slung over one shoulder. The couple decided to pull over and offer him a ride. As the hitchhiker climbed into the back seat, the couple couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. There was something off about the way he moved, like he was trying to hide something. Nevertheless, they tried to make small talk with him and put their suspicions aside. The road wound on through the darkness, and the couple couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The hitchhiker's strange behavior only added to their unease, as he kept fidgeting and looking over his shoulder. The ominous atmosphere was thick, and the couple regretted their decision to pick up the hitchhiker. As they drove deeper into the remote area, the hitchhiker's behavior became increasingly erratic and unsettling. He started muttering to himself, his movements becoming more frenzied and unpredictable. The couple couldn't ignore their growing fear and tension, feeling like they were trapped in a nightmare. The darkness was unyielding, and the only light came from the car's headlights. The road ahead twisted and turned, the shadows seeming to move and shift in the corners of their vision. The ominous atmosphere weighed heavily on them, as if they were being watched by some malevolent force. The hitchhiker's strange behavior only added to their growing sense of danger, his movements becoming more and more aggressive. The couple tried to ignore it, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were in grave danger. Their hearts racing and their breaths shallow, the couple realized that they were in serious trouble. The hitchhiker was no longer just a strange passenger, but a threat to their very lives. Suddenly, the hitchhiker's body began to contort and twist, as if it were breaking apart from the inside. The young couple's eyes widened in horror as the hitchhiker's skin split open, revealing something far more terrifying underneath. The creature that emerged from the hitchhiker's skin was unlike anything the couple had ever seen. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger, and its skin was mottled with oozing, pus-filled boils. Its teeth were sharp and jagged, and it let out an ear-splitting roar that made the couple's skin crawl. The couple realized they were trapped in the car with this monstrous creature, their escape routes cut off. The creature began to claw at the car, its talons leaving deep gouges in the metal. The couple tried to start the car and speed away, but the engine wouldn't turn over. They were trapped, with only the thin barrier of the car door separating them from death. The creature's roars grew louder, more frenzied as it began to attack the car with renewed vigor. The couple screamed in terror as the car shook and jolted, the glass cracking under the creature's blows. With each impact, the couple gasped for air, wondering if this was the end. As the creature continued to pummel the car, the terrified couple was left with no choice but to fight for their lives. They desperately tried to defend themselves with whatever they could find in the car, but it was clear that they were outmatched. They knew they needed to find a way to escape. Huddled in the car, the husband realized that they had to take drastic measures. Scanning the car for something to fight back with, they noticed a canister of gasoline in the trunk. Though dangerous, they had no other choice but to try and burn the creature. Dousing the creature with the flammable liquid, the husband and wife quickly lit a match and threw it at the creature, causing it to burst into flames. The creature let out a final howl of agony as it burned, filling the car with the stench of charred flesh. Breathing a sigh of relief, the couple soon realized that the car was damaged beyond repair, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way to call for help. Just when they thought all was lost, a figure appeared out of the darkness. It was the hitchhiker, alive and well. The couple gasped for air, unable to believe what they were seeing. The hitchhiker explained that the creature was a demon he had been possessed by, and that he had been searching for a way to free himself from its grip. He offered to help the couple, and together they set out on foot, hoping to find a way out of the remote area. The couple and the hitchhiker hiked through the dark, deserted road, their hearts pounding with fear. As they walked, the creature's attacks grew more intense, the stench of burnt flesh still lingering in the air. The night seemed to close in on them, the darkness becoming almost suffocating. Suddenly, the creature appeared again, blocking their path. Its eyes glowed with a fiery malevolence, and it let out a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath their feet. The situation had become dire, and the couple knew they had to make a final, desperate attempt to escape. The husband quickly took out a knife and charged at the creature, hoping to create a distraction so that his wife and the hitchhiker could make a run for it. The creature, however, was too quick for him, and its claws sliced through his chest like a hot knife through butter. The wife and the hitchhiker ran, their legs pumping with a desperate primal energy. Suddenly, the hitchhiker let out an embarrassing sound, and the wife was hit with the stench of his flatulence. She quickly put her hand up to cover her nose and mouth, her eyes watering in disgust, while the hitchhiker simply hung his head in shame. The creature, however, seemed to take great pleasure in the sound and scent, following them even more closely as they ran. They could hear the creature's footsteps behind them, getting closer and closer. Their breathing grew labored and their hearts raced as they ran for their lives. Just as they were about to give up, they saw a glimmer of light in the distance. It was a small cabin, and it was their only hope. They ran towards it, their lungs burning and their legs feeling like they would give out at any moment. As they burst into the cabin, they locked the door behind them, barely managing to catch their breath. They could hear the creature clawing at the door, trying to get in, and they knew they had only bought themselves a little time. As the creature continued to claw at the door, the couple and the hitchhiker looked around the cabin, desperately searching for anything they could use to defend themselves. It was then that they noticed a strange symbol etched into the wall. It was a sigil that the hitchhiker recognized as a summoning symbol for the very demon that had possessed him. In that moment, a horrifying realization struck the couple and the hitchhiker. The creature was not some external force, but a manifestation of the hitchhiker's own inner demons. The demon had been using the hitchhiker to find a way to escape, and the couple's decision to pick him up had played right into the demon's hands. The realization was agonizing, and the room seemed to spin as the couple and the hitchhiker tried to come to terms with what they had just discovered. The very thing they had been running from was a part of the hitchhiker himself. The demons pounding on the door grew louder and more frenzied, and the couple and the hitchhiker knew they had to act fast. They quickly devised a plan to use the summoning symbol to send the demon back to hell. The room filled with the sound of chanting as they worked to complete the ritual, the tension almost unbearable. The demon let out a final agonizing scream as it was banished back to the underworld, and the cabin fell silent. The couple and the hitchhiker collapsed on the floor, drained and shaken from the experience. They were left to contemplate what might happen next. They wondered if they would be able to shake the feeling of terror and uncertainty, or if it would continue to haunt them. As they stepped out of the cabin, the night was silent and still. The darkness seemed to stretch on forever, with only the stars above casting a faint glow. The tension in the air was palpable, as if something was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike.